My brother thinks he earned his corner office. He doesn't know I bought the chair he sits in. Every morning, I watch him walk into the building I secretly own. And every morning, I pick up the phone to tell him. Then I put it down again. He hugged me at Dad's funeral and said, "At least we still have each other." He didn't know I was about to become the reason he might never speak to me again. For 4 years, he called me his little sister. For 4 years, I called myself his boss. And yesterday, he found the file that will destroy us both. I never told my brother I own the company he works for as CEO, but he's about to find out. And I have no idea if he'll ever forgive me. My name is Claire. And for 4 years, I sat 3 blocks away from my own brother in a tiny office with no windows, pretending to be a ghost. I watched him through the glass walls of his world. I saw him laugh with his team. I saw him stay late, night after night, trying to prove himself. I saw him grow tired and thin and then strong again. And every single morning, I picked up my phone to call him. Every single morning, I put it back down, because I never told my brother that I owned the company he worked for as CEO. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not to make excuses, to make you understand how a good person can do a terrible thing and call it love. I was born Claire Elizabeth Matthews in a small town outside of Richmond, Virginia. My father, Richard Matthews, was a truck driver who became a dispatcher, who became a fleet manager, who became the owner of a single truck. That truck was the start of Matthews Logistics. By the time I was 10, we had 50 trucks. By the time I was 16, we had 500. By the time I was 22, we had 2,000 trucks, 3 warehouses, and a contract with one of the largest retail chains in America. But to me and my older brother Daniel, Dad was never the CEO. He was the man who smelled like diesel and coffee. The man who taught Daniel how to change a tire and taught me how to read a balance sheet. The man who called us his greatest shipment every single night before bed. Daniel was 3 years older than me. He was everything I was not. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that filled a room. He played football in high school, not because he was good, but because he loved the noise and the mud and the way his teammates cheered. He studied business in college, but he spent most of his time making friends. Everyone loved Daniel. The warehouse workers loved him because he remembered their kids' names. The drivers loved him because he rode shotgun on overnight hauls just to keep them company. The board members loved him because he could sell ice to a snowstorm. I was different. I loved quiet. I loved numbers. I loved the way a spreadsheet could tell a story without any lies. In high school, I ran the math club. In college, I got my MBA in 2 years instead of 3. I never went to parties. I never dated much. I just worked. Dad used to say I had his father's brain, sharp, cold, and unafraid of the dark. We were a strange pair, Daniel and me. He was the sun. I was the moon. We only existed in the same sky during rare eclipses. When Dad got sick, the eclipse came. It was pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. Dad was 61. He had never smoked. He had never been sick a day in his life. He went from running 5 miles a day to needing a wheelchair in less than 3 months. Daniel dropped out of his senior year to come home. I took a leave from my graduate program. We moved into Dad's house, the old farmhouse where we grew up, and we took turns sitting with him. Daniel held his hand and told him stories about the company. I sat in the corner and updated spreadsheets on my laptop, trying to keep the business from collapsing while Dad slipped away. One night near the end, Dad woke up at 2 in the morning. His eyes were clear. He looked at Daniel, who was asleep in the chair beside the bed, and then he looked at me. "Claire," he whispered, "come here." I knelt beside him. His hand was so thin I could feel every bone. "I need you to do something for me," he said. "Anything, Dad. The company, I'm leaving it to both of you, but I'm leaving the control to you." I shook my head. "Dad, no. Daniel is the leader. He's the one everyone follows." Dad smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind that knows things you don't. "Daniel is my heart, but you are my spine. A company can survive without a heart for a little while. It cannot survive without a spine. Promise me you'll take care of him. Promise me you'll be strong enough to make the hard choices." I promised. I meant it. He died 3 days later, in his sleep. Daniel was holding one hand. I was holding the other. And when his breath stopped, the world stopped with it. The will was read a week after the funeral. I remember the lawyer's office. Dark wood, heavy curtains, the smell of old paper and grief. Daniel sat next to me, wearing a suit that didn't fit anymore because he had lost 15 pounds. I wore a black dress that felt like a costume. The lawyer cleared his throat. To my son, Daniel James Matthews, I leave 49% of Matthews Logistics with the title of President of Operations. Daniel nodded. He didn't smile, he just nodded. To my daughter, Claire Elizabeth Matthews, I leave 51% of Matthews Logistics with the title of Chief Executive Officer. The room went silent. I heard my own heartbeat. Daniel turned to me. His face was not angry. It was worse, it was confused, hurt, the face of a boy who has just realized his father didn't trust him. "Claire," he said, his voice cracked. "You." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The lawyer continued reading, but I didn't hear any of it. I just watched Daniel's face change. The confusion turned to something harder, something I had never seen before. After the lawyer finished, Daniel stood up. He walked to the window. He stood there for a long time with his back to me. "I didn't know," I finally said. "I swear, Daniel, I didn't know." He turned around. His eyes were red. "He never told me. All those years, all those summers in the office, all those talks about the future, he never once said that you would be in charge. Maybe he was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Daniel laughed. It was not his laugh. It was a sharp, broken sound. "From what?" "From knowing that my little sister was always better than me. That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about, Claire? Tell me, explain it to me." I couldn't explain it. I didn't understand it myself. All I knew was that my father had given me a gift that felt like a curse, and my brother was looking at me like I had stolen something from him. The next few months were a blur. Daniel took the COO role. He showed up to work every day. He did his job. He was polite to me in meetings. He called me Miss Matthews instead of Claire. He ate lunch alone in his office. He stopped coming to Sunday dinners at Mom's house. He stopped answering my texts. I tried, God knows I tried. I sent him articles I thought he would like. I left cookies on his desk. I asked him to go fishing the way we used to with Dad. He always had a reason to say no. Meetings, reports, fatigue. One night, I found him in the parking lot after everyone else had gone home. He was sitting in his truck, staring at the dashboard. I knocked on the window. He rolled it down. "Daniel," I said, "please talk to me." He looked at me. For a moment, I saw my brother. The one who taught me to ride a bike. The one who beat up a bully for calling me Four Eyes. The one who drove 6 hours to bring me soup when I had the flu in college. Then the moment passed. "I can't, Claire," he said. "I look at you and I see everything Dad didn't think I could be. I need time." He rolled up the window. He drove away. And I stood alone in the empty parking lot, crying so hard I thought my chest would split open. That was the beginning of the lie. For the first year, I ran the company from the corner office on the top floor. Daniel ran operations from the floor below. We communicated through our CFO, a gentle man named Harold who looked older every day. I made the big decisions. Daniel made the day-to-day calls. On paper, it worked. In reality, we were two strangers sharing a last name. Then the crisis came. A new trade law, a spike in fuel prices, a competitor from overseas undercutting our prices by 20%. Matthews Logistics was bleeding cash. The board wanted to close 2 warehouses and lay off 600 people. I refused. I spent 3 months working 80-hour weeks, renegotiating contracts, selling underperforming assets, and building a new software system that would automate our supply chain. The software was my monster. I coded it myself, night after night, alone in my apartment. I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. I forgot to eat. I lost 20 pounds. But the software worked. It reduced our costs by 35%. It saved every single job. It made Matthews Logistics stronger than ever. It also made Daniel's job harder. His team of dispatchers was cut in half. His manual processes were replaced by algorithms. He was a master of the old way, and the old way was gone. He didn't complain. He didn't blame the software. He just grew quieter, more distant. He stopped coming to the office some days. He worked from home. He stopped returning Harold's calls. And I knew he was hurting. I knew he blamed me. And I knew that if I stayed in that corner office, I would lose him forever. So I decided to leave, not the company. I couldn't leave the company. The board trusted me. The investors trusted me. The employees trusted me, but I could leave the title. I could step back. I could find someone else to be the face of Matthew's logistics while I worked in the shadows. I found a man named Arthur Vance. He was 68 years old, retired, gray hair, quiet eyes. He had been a CEO in the paper industry, which had nothing to do with logistics. Perfect. No one would ask questions. I paid him a large salary to sit in my corner office, nod at the right times, and sign whatever I put in front of him. I told the board I was taking a medical leave. Stress. Burnout. They were reluctant, but I had the votes. I told Harold the truth. He was horrified. He begged me not to do it, but I reminded him that I owned 51%, and I reminded him that Daniel needed space to grow. Harold sighed. "You're going to regret this, Claire." "Probably," I said, "but at least I'll have my brother." I rented a small office in a shared workspace on 3rd Street, no windows, one desk, one phone, one computer. I put a fake name on the door, Claire Mitchell, Strategic Consulting. I bought cheap sweaters from the thrift store. I stopped wearing makeup. I became a ghost. Every morning, I took the bus to my fake office. I answered emails from a dummy account. I called into board meetings using a voice modulator. I made life and death decisions about payroll, contracts, and acquisitions while sitting in a plastic chair that cost $40. I ate vending machine sandwiches for lunch. I drank coffee so old it tasted like regret. And every afternoon, I walked past the Matthews Logistics building on my way to the bus stop. I looked up at the windows. I imagined Daniel inside, growing stronger, becoming the leader Dad always knew he could be, and I told myself that the pain was worth it. For 2 years, it worked. Daniel blossomed. Without me in the building, he found his footing. He hired a new operations team. He learned to read financial statements. He gave a speech at a logistics conference that made me cry in my sad little office. He was featured in a trade magazine. The headline said, "Daniel Matthews, the comeback kid." He even started coming to Sunday dinners again. Mom was so happy she cried. Daniel brought a girlfriend named Sarah, a veterinarian with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. He talked about the company. He talked about the future. He didn't talk about me. I was still on my fake medical leave. He asked about my health. I said I was getting better. He nodded. He didn't push. That was the worst part. He didn't push because he didn't want to know. Then Arthur Vance retired. The board asked Daniel to be interim CEO. He said yes. 6 months later, they made it permanent. Daniel Matthews, CEO of Matthews Logistics. The title our father never gave him, finally in his hands. I should have told him then. I should have walked into his office, closed the door, and said, "Daniel, it was me, the software, the decisions, the secret CEO, all of it, I never left. And I am so sorry." But I didn't, because he was happy, really, truly happy. The kind of happy he hadn't been since Dad died. He laughed again. He teased me about my sweaters. He asked me for advice on proposing to Sarah. He called me his little sister, and it didn't sound like a weapon, so I stayed quiet. I stayed in my fake office. I stayed a ghost. And the lie grew teeth. The unraveling came on a Thursday. I was in my office reviewing a contract when my phone rang. It was Harold. His voice was strange, shaky. "Claire, you need to come to the main office." "I can't, Harold, you know that. There's a problem." An auditor from the corporate compliance team found something. Signatures, your signatures, on documents from the Arthur Vance period. They're asking questions. My heart stopped. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing yet, but Daniel found the file. He's in the boardroom. He hasn't moved in an hour." I drove faster than I have ever driven. I parked in the underground garage. I took the private elevator to the executive floor. I walked down the hallway I had avoided for 3 years. My cheap shoes squeaked on the marble. My hands were shaking. The boardroom doors were glass. I saw Daniel inside. Alone, sitting at the head of the table. In front of him was a stack of papers. My signatures, my real signatures. Claire Elizabeth Matthews, CEO. He looked up when I opened the door. His face was pale. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who had been drowning for a long time and had just realized no one was coming to save him. "Claire," he said. His voice was flat, empty. "Daniel, let me explain." "Explain what?" "Explain how you've been running my company from a broom closet for 3 years. Explain how you let me think I was finally good enough when you were pulling the strings the whole time. It wasn't like that." "Then, what was it like?" He stood up. His chair fell over. He didn't pick it up. You owe me the truth, Claire. For once in your life, just tell me the truth. I took a breath. I let the tears come. I didn't wipe them away. Dad left me control because he was scared, I said. Not of you. For you, he knew you had the heart to lead, but he also knew that the first few years would be brutal. He wanted someone to protect you until you were ready. I was supposed to be that person, but I did it wrong. I did it in secret. I thought I was protecting you. I was really protecting myself. Because I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you would hate me. And I couldn't lose you, Daniel. I couldn't lose the only family I had left. He stared at me. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched into fists. Do you know what the worst part is? He said. The worst part is that I would have understood. If you had just told me, I would have been angry. I would have been hurt, but I would have understood. You're my sister. I love you. But you didn't trust me. You never trusted me. And that's what hurts more than any of the rest of it. I trusted you, I whispered. I just didn't trust myself. He shook his head. He picked up the stack of papers. He held them in his hands like they were made of glass. I quit, he said. Effective immediately. The company is yours. Congratulations, Claire, you win. He walked out. He didn't look back. The glass doors swung shut. And I was alone in the boardroom, surrounded by the ghost of my father, the ghost of my brother, and the ghost of the truth I had been too afraid to tell. The next 4 months were the longest of my life. Daniel didn't answer my calls. He didn't answer my texts. He moved out of his apartment. He left the city. He went to a cabin our family owned in the Blue Ridge Mountains. No phone. No internet, just him and the woods and the silence. I told the board the truth, all of it. They were furious. There were meetings, threats, lawyers. But in the end, they decided that exposing the lie would destroy the company. I resigned as chairwoman. I kept 10% of my shares, just enough to have a seat at the table, not enough to have control. I was free, and I had never been more alone. Mom stopped talking to me for a while, not out of anger, out of sadness. She said I had broken something that could never be fixed. She said Dad would be disappointed. She said she needed time. I gave her time. I gave everyone time, because time was all I had left. I sold my apartment. I moved into a small rental near the river. I stopped wearing the cheap sweaters. I stopped going to the fake office. I stopped being anyone at all. I just existed. I woke up. I ate. I slept. I dreamed about Daniel. In my dreams, he was always laughing, and I always woke up crying. On a Friday in October, I drove to the cabin. It was a long drive. 4 hours through the mountains, past the leaves turning gold and red, past the small towns where we used to stop for ice cream as kids. I almost turned back a dozen times. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I kept going. The cabin was small, wooden, with a porch that faced a lake. The grass was overgrown. The windows were dark. I parked the car and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door. Then I got out. The air was cold. The sky was gray. It smelled like rain and pine and the end of something. I walked to the porch. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still no answer. I tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, the cabin was dark and cold. A fire had gone out in the wood stove. There were dishes in the sink, a sleeping bag on the floor. And on the table, a photograph, our family, Dad, Mom, Daniel, and me. We were at the beach. Daniel was maybe 10. I was 7. We were building a sandcastle. Dad was laughing. Mom was holding a camera. I picked up the photograph. I held it to my chest, and I started to cry. I don't know how long I stood there. A long time, long enough for the light outside to change, long enough for my tears to dry on my face. Then I heard a sound behind me. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy on the porch. I turned around. Daniel was standing in the doorway. He looked terrible. Thin, pale. His beard was long and unkempt. His eyes were hollow. He was wearing an old flannel shirt that used to belong to Dad. He looked like a man who had been living in the wilderness for a very long time. He looked like a man who had been grieving. "Claire," he said. His voice was rough. He hadn't used it much. "Daniel," I said, "I brought you something." He didn't move. He just stood there, blocking the door, looking at me like I was a stranger. I walked to the table. I set down the photograph. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a small wooden box. It was old, carved. The same box Dad used to keep on his dresser. I set it next to the photograph. Daniel looked at the box, then at me. "What is it?" "Open it." He walked slowly, like an old man, to the table. He sat down. He picked up the box. He opened the lid. Inside were 3 things. First, a letter, handwritten, 12 pages. I had written it over the course of a month, rewriting every sentence until it said exactly what I meant. It started with, "Dear Daniel, I am so sorry for every day I didn't tell you the truth." It ended with, "You are my brother, you are my family, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn back the trust I broke." Second, a key. Small, silver, the key to the corner office on the top floor of Matthews Logistics. I had kept it all this time. I had never used it, but I had kept it. Third, a stock transfer form. Signed, notarized. I had transferred all my remaining shares to Daniel, every single one. The company was his, completely, irrevocably. No strings, no secrets, no ghosts. Daniel stared at the form. He stared at it for a long time. His hands were shaking. "Claire," he whispered, "what did you do?" "I gave you what was always yours," I said. "The company, the control, the future, I don't want any of it. I never wanted any of it. I just wanted you. And I was too scared to say that. So I hid and I lied, and I hurt you in ways I can never undo. But I am done hiding, Daniel. I am done lying. I am just your sister, if you'll still have me." He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. His face was broken open, like a wall that had finally cracked. "You're an idiot," he said. "I know. You're the smartest idiot I've ever known." "I know that, too." He stood up. He walked toward me, and then he hugged me, not a polite hug, not a quick hug, a real hug. The kind of hug you give someone when you are afraid they might disappear. He held me so tight I couldn't breathe. He cried into my shoulder. I cried into his. We stood there in the dark cabin, holding each other, and for the first time in 4 years, I felt like I was home. We talked for hours that night. We built a fire. We drank coffee. We sat on the porch and watched the stars come out, and we talked about Dad, about the company, about the years we lost. Daniel told me how lonely he had been, how he had spent every day trying to prove he was good enough, how he had almost given up so many times, how the only thing that kept him going was the hope that one day we would find our way back to each other. I told him about the fake office, the voice modulator, the vending machine sandwiches. I told him about the nights I cried myself to sleep because I missed him so much. I told him about the fear that had ruled my life for so long. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just listened. When I finished, he took my hand. His fingers were rough, calloused from chopping wood. They felt like Dad's hands. "Claire," he said, "I forgive you." I started crying again. How can you forgive me after everything I did?" "Because you're my sister, because you did it for love. Because you did it badly, but you never stopped. And because life is too short to hold on to anger. Dad taught us that. Remember? He used to say that anger is a heavy suitcase. You can carry it for a while, but eventually your arms get tired." I laughed. It was a wet, messy laugh. "I remember." "So let's put down the suitcase," Daniel said. "Together." We stayed at the cabin for 3 more days. We hiked the old trails. We fished in the lake. We cooked meals over the fire. We told stories about Dad. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. We cried until we had no tears left. And on the last day, before we drove back to the city, Daniel handed me the stock transfer form. He had torn it into tiny pieces. "I don't want your shares," he said. "I want my sister, and I want you to come back to the company. Not as CEO, not as my boss, as my partner, the way Dad always wanted." I looked at the torn paper, then at Daniel. "Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life." I went back, not to the corner office, to a new office. Smaller, on the same floor as Daniel's, with a window that faced the sun. We put a sign on the door, "Claire Matthews, Chief Strategy Officer." No secrets, no lies, just my name. We run the company together now. Daniel is CEO. He handles the people, the culture, the vision. I handle the numbers, the strategy, the future. We have lunch together every day. We argue about budgets. We celebrate wins. We sit in Daniel's office after everyone else has gone home, and we talk about Dad. And every time, without fail, Daniel says the same thing. "He would be proud of you, Claire." And I say, he would be proud of both of us. Last week, Daniel married Sarah, the veterinarian with the kind eyes. I was the maid of honor. I cried through the whole ceremony. Daniel cried too. He didn't even try to hide it. After the reception, when everyone else had gone home, Daniel pulled me aside. He was still wearing his tuxedo. His tie was loose, his hair was messy, he looked happy. Really, truly happy. "Claire," he said, "thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for driving to the cabin, for telling me the truth. For being my sister." I hugged him. "Thank you for forgiving me, for coming back, for being my brother." He smiled, that easy, careless, golden smile, the one I thought I had lost forever. "We're a mess, you and me," he said. "The biggest mess," I agreed. "But we're a mess together." And that, I have learned, is what family means. Not perfection, not secrets, not control. Just two people who keep showing up for each other, even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I am Claire. I was the secret CEO. And I finally understand that the greatest power I ever had was not the power to control the company. It was the power to tell the truth to the person I loved most in this world. If you are keeping a secret from someone you love, please learn from my story. Secrets are not shields, they are walls. They keep people out. And the longer you hide behind them, the harder they are to tear down. But here is the good news. Walls can be broken, trust can be rebuilt, love can survive even the deepest wounds. It just takes courage. It just takes honesty. It just takes one person willing to say, "I was wrong, I am sorry, and I am here, for real this time." Daniel and I still have hard days. We still have moments when the old hurt bubbles up. But we talk about it now. We don't hide. We don't pretend. We sit across from each other at the old diner where Dad used to take us for milkshakes, and we say the hard things. And then we move on, because that is what family does. That is what love does. It moves on. It grows. It becomes something new. I never told my brother I owned the company he worked for as CEO. For 4 years, that secret was a prison. But the truth set us both free. And now, finally, after all this time, I am not a ghost. I am not a secret. I am not a CEO hiding in a fake office. I am just Claire, his sister, and that is more than enough.